for the 14th of September. We have with us Alderman Briscoe, Councillor Dutta and Councillor Coates. We have an apology from Councillor Harvey, and I can't see Alderman Barakis at the minute, so we'll expect him to arrive. We have nobody to co-opt in Councillor Harvey's absence. Oh, hello, Alderman Barakis. Welcome.
Good.
So item 2 is confirmation of minutes. Can I have somebody confirm those minutes, please?
Confirm.
Thanks, Councillor Dutta. Those in favour?
Aye.
Oh, is there any dissent, really? Thank you. All right, no dissent. I'll declare that carried. Item 3 is consideration of supplementary items. Can I have somebody move that, please? Councillor Dutta again. Thank you. Any dissent? There's no dissent. I'll declare that carried. Item 4 is indications of pecuniary conflicts of interest. Any conflicts? No. Okay. Item 5 is transfer of agenda items. Any transfers? Nope. Item 6, planning authority items, consideration of items with deputations. Can I have somebody move that, please? Thank you, Alderman Briscoe. Any dissent? No dissent? Okay. All right. So item 7 is committee acting as a planning authority. And we'll move to the deputations. So Craig, if you can let the representatives and applicant in for 7.1.1, which is 23 Commercial Road, North Hobart, partial demolition and alterations at Friends School. So welcome, Mr. Hanbury, Mr. Rona. Hold on. Oh, that's better. Okay, welcome. And we have for the applicant, Mr. Bill Avery. Anybody else with you, Bill? No, okay. All right, well, Mr. Rona, you have 5 minutes to address the committee with your concerns. So if you'd like to take yourself off mute, and so you have 5 minutes, and then we'll ask questions of you after that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Anton Rona. I represent myself and my wife from 21 Carr Street, and Hamish Gibson from 26 Carr Street. My house is directly opposite the proposed gym, and Hamish Gibson's house is one removed from the proposed gym. To start with, we're not against this development, but it's been hard not to be against the proposal in its current form. Of significant concern about this development application is the noise from hours of operations and the traffic and parking. We're looking for solutions, but the proponents have not engaged appropriately with local residents to find the solutions, nor are they accepting their overall change in use of the facilities is detrimental to the local community. Let me just summarise. Parking and traffic. At present, the drop-off and pick-up situation is untenable, and the school refuses to take accountability for the situation and keeps on blaming the council's lack of enforcement. We're sick of being told of where to go by parents when they drop off the kids and pick up the kids. And despite the residents approaching the school to find a solution and us asking for a meeting with the board and the governors, we had a meeting with the principal, and the principal's feedback was, I do not care about parking, I care about education. However, the school is part of the local community, and we believe this is a major concern of the residents concern about the proposed development. The amount of complaints to the Hobart City Council traffic and parking team, and they have been fantastic, to be fair, plus police, I believe would be in excess of 50 just for this year for Carr Street and the neighbouring Wilson Street, which is the Friends Health and Fitness Gym. The parking report at the end of the day fails to highlight and consider any impact of the extra 100 people of spectators that will use the gym as per the development application. Nor does it fail to consider this, it fails to consider use relevant data. It is 5-year-old data, and we don't know if it's on a school day or if it's on a weekend. The cumulative impact of the Friends Health and Fitness Gym plus 100 and a construction workforce that even is not allocated through this process is still not actually identified through the report. Just to be clear, where are we going to park the extra 100 spectators? Just a very clear question. Lastly, for parking, there is also a very dangerous proposal and amendment to the application where the visuals from the proposed new distance next to 24 Car Street is way below Australian standards for site distance, and that's section 6.12 of your report. Australian standard is 80 metres and it is less than 60 metres and could have a high impact if there is a potential collision with a child from the school. I would like to see this development approval delayed until an appropriate parking traffic solution is found with the local residents' input. We're not trying to approve it, we'd just like to have some input to the process before approval is provided. Noise and operating hours. The present use of the facilities is now a low noise impact from 8 through to 4 every weekend. Of concern is an extra noise from 1, basketball bouncing, and 2, the extra 100 spectators coming and going. The school has represented to the council it would only be used 8 Sundays a year for camps. Respectfully, we will ask that the following conditions be implemented: that the hours of use are halted at 4 p.m. on Saturdays and only 8 Sundays per year as represented by the school. And 2, if it can provide feedback via an independent third party, we can hear the bouncing balls in either 21 Car Street, 24, 26 or 28 Car Street, then the council rescinds the use of basketball court. Streetscape. The proposed development doesn't fit in with the adjacent properties or the properties opposite the proposed development. It doesn't fit in with the planning requirements, especially the overall planning building envelope. Of note, the impact to 21 Car Street is significant and still has not been assessed in the development application. We are opposite it. We recommend that the height of the building is reduced either by excavation or lower roof to meet with the planning building envelope. In summation, there are a lot of conditions on this application which seems to suggest it really isn't completely worked out. We respectfully ask that the proposal is delayed for a proper traffic study is complete, including the construction period, which is very important. Conditions of the approval include the building meet planning envelope schemes. And lastly, we have 1 day off a week. And we limit the crazy parking and traffic of the extra 100 spectators to only 8 Sundays a year. None of the local residents are happy with this development application in terms of parking, traffic, potential noise and change of streetscape. But at the end of the day, it's going from 10 to 12 people using it to 100 spectators on a weekend at nights. And this is significant. And I'm surprised this whole change in use hasn't been tackled in the development application. Hopefully I've kept to my 5 minutes, and I thank everyone and I appreciate your patience for listening to what I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Rona. Appreciate your comments. Are there any questions from any of the committee? All right. Yes, Alderman Briscoe and then Alderman Barakis.
Thank you, Mr. Rona. Thank you, Chair. You have read the report where the hours have been reduced during the week to 6 p.m, I believe. Did you notice that?
Yes, I did notice that, but it's more the Saturdays and Sundays, which is of concern. We'd actually like it limited to 8 Sundays a year as per representation made to us. It was only going to be used by camps, and also to 4 p.m. on Saturdays because it does get pretty noisy and we don't want 100 people deciding to leave around 6 p.m. So we understand the concept of 8 to 6. Yes, we do.
Right. Thank you.
Alderman Barakis, then Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Chair. And just touching on the parking issue, because I think that's probably the one that's the biggest concern to me. You did say that you were told that during discussions with the applicants about the issue that there was no interest in parking because they were interested in education. Just to double check, because it's something I might chase up on. Who was it that said that to you?
The principal was said that to the delegation, and you'll also have that comment actually confirmed by one of the other applicants that will discuss this very soon.
Righto, thank you.
Councillor Data.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I'm just making an observation here in the context of your statement. You said all the residents are opposed to that. I note here that there were only 8 residents who were opposed to this. What do you mean when you say all? Is it just the 8 of you?
Yeah, I do apologise, Alderman Darko. That was probably a bit of a too much of it, but it's 8 of the residents closestly affected. And so that is what I meant by what I call adjacent, next door and opposite. My apologies for that statement.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Rona, I have a question. Obviously, this is a significant development in your neighbourhood, and parking has no doubt been a problem previously to this application. I suspect from what you've been saying. What things, apart from the suggestion about reducing the parking times, which may be contrary to what we can do as part of the planning scheme, you're just suggesting that should be reduced to 4 o'clock on Saturdays. Was it both Saturdays and Sundays?
Yep. So with respect to there's confusion of 2 issues. The parking is a real issue that is not resolved in the planning application. And the extra 100 cars has not been discussed. The school is already short of parking. And if you have a look at the other campus, they've actually got a drop-on, drop-off point, and there is no drop-on and drop-off point on campus currently in that Carr Street facility or commercial road facility. So I just wanted to highlight that is one issue. The other issue about hours of operation was about noise and impact on the local residents, Alderman Burnett. So apologies for any confusion there. Importantly, what we're trying to say is that the parking and traffic management needs to be better sorted out before this approval is given, because at the moment it's dangerous. Residents are getting abused for parking their cars from the local Friends community, and that's a very large community, and that means parents dropping it on and dropping off. When we try and get out of our driveways, they tell us to take a very large hike without trying to be rude and respectful.
Okay, well, the current expiry date is the 22nd of September, so it's a little difficult without the applicant's permission to extend that and to be able to have that extended. So, but thank you, Mr. Rona. If there are no further questions for Mr. Rona, we'll move on to Mr. Hanbury. Mr. Rona, could you mute yourself again, please, just so that we don't get any feedback? Thank you. And over to you, Mr. Hanbury.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I hope I'm getting through to you. This is a new experience for me, Zooming. I'm an old Luddite, and I hope I press the right buttons at the right time.
You're doing well.
Okay, you've got me. That's good. I'd like to preface my remarks by saying I have served on school councils of both private and public schools. And I've been really disappointed in the attitude and the performance of the Friends Board, particularly in relation to this DA. It's my belief what they should have done initially was to have an open day in the early stages of this development process, an open day at the school, inviting the neighbours and interested parties to discuss the perceived problems that we may have. What unfortunately didn't happen is they not only refused that, they also were asked twice by myself on behalf of my neighbours to meet with them, and twice they refused. What we were afforded was an opportunity to meet with employees of the school on 2 occasions. The first meeting was deemed to be non-productive by us, and the second meeting occurred with the headmaster, and Anton's already told you about his reaction. What I want to stress about that reaction, I mean, it was breathtaking with its arrogance, but what I want to stress about it is he is saying on behalf of the school that the school's responsibilities stop at the gate of the school. In the actual fact, he has a point. So whose responsibility is it beyond the school gate for the chaos that we experience on Carr Street? Carr Street, of course, is a narrow suburban street, split level, and for some years now has been trying to do something it was never designed to do. There is a problem, and it's a growing problem, and to say that there's chaos there on times is not overplaying the hand. I have to say to you, Council, the real problem is you. You are the problem with Carr Street. You are responsible for Carr Street. And I put to you a long time ago, you should have addressed this and demanded of the school, because they are the participants on the street generating the chaos, that there should have been a viable drop-off zone on their campus. That comes as no surprise to the school, because the school has one, as Anton's pointed out, on its other campus. But for some extraordinary reason, you've turned a blind eye and have not insisted that they have a drop-off zone on the campus. That is the only way this minor street is going to cope with the volume that's there now, which will be exacerbated if you don't do it by the proposed DA. I also want to draw your attention to the fact that there were other sites considered. This is not the only site on the school that could have had a new gymnasium, if in fact a new gymnasium is needed. The other site was on Commercial Road. And it's interesting to note, if that site had been considered by you, you would have had an underground parking stroke drop-off zone facility. It looks like the school has opted for the cheaper option of coming up and taking away viable tennis courts to put on a facility which will make the problems on Carr Street even greater than they are today. So I just don't want to see you shirking your responsibility. You are the party that have caused the problem by not insisting that the school provide the facilities that are deemed necessary. One further point I want to make is your administration of Carr Street has been further critical in terms of the junction of Wilson and Carr Street. I wrote to council asking for some information. For reasons I do not know, you haven't provided it. You need to be able to tell me and the community what happened with the reconstruction of that intersection, which is will be part of the problems with this DA. What happened was that Downers did the work on your behalf, and the site manager I met on, because I was giving him and the crew morning tea, was shaking his head and said, I can't believe council officers have been up here and told me I've got to put in a facility that just will not work. They wouldn't listen to him. They went ahead, and within a couple of months, at great expense, that intersection was ripped up and reconfigured as according to what Down said was necessary. I've asked the council, have I gone over my time?
Mr. Hanbury, a lot of these things that you've raised might be important, but they're not important in the context of what we're considering tonight. So in a nutshell, is there anything that you want to add, because your time is about to expire?
Okay, with due respect, it is related to the DA, because the biggest problem with the facility as proposed is Carr Street. And you need to look at the total story of Carr Street. That is something the council is yet to do.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. All right. So I'll open it to questions. Do any of the elected members have a question? Alderman Briscoe. Just unmute yourself, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hanbury, for your presentation. I do take note that some responsibility it lies with the council here. What do you think should happen if this development goes ahead? What steps do you think the council could take to alleviate some of the situation that is in Carr now and probably exacerbated, I think that's the right word, if this development goes ahead?
Well, with respect, it is your absolute duty to ensure that a drop-off zone is put on campus as a part of the DA. It's no good looking at it afterwards. This is something you should have done as a council years ago. It's an oversight by council, or you've turned a blind eye, one or the other. But nevertheless, it is something that must be addressed, because the problem here is if there's a serious accident, who's going to point the bone at you?
Thank you, Mr. Hanbury. I suppose in a way, in response to your comment, we've got to accept the application that's in front of us. There doesn't seem to be a master plan which for the campus, and if there was a master plan, then hopefully the council would have some say in it, but I'll ask the applicant in a moment about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, thanks, Mr. Hanbury. And now I'll invite the applicants. So I think we have in the room, can't see you all that well, but is Seamus Mulcahy there, Bill Avery and Neil Shepherd? Yes?
That is correct, yes. And we also have our Deputy Lord Mayor, we have our Facilities and Services Manager, Richard Apted.
Thank you. Okay, so you've heard you've heard the concerns raised by the representatives, and if you could answer some of those questions, and you have 5 minutes to do that, and then we'll ask some questions of you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, and good afternoon to the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to present on behalf of the Friends School. The works proposed by the Friends School are on our high school campus and involve the refurbishment of our current WN Oates Centre gymnasium into a new central learning centre with contemporary learning spaces and associated amenities. A new gymnasium would be built to obviously replace the existing one on our current upper tennis courts on Carr Street. Equity of access would be significantly improved as the proposal includes the elevators and a number of linking bridges to existing buildings on campus. I must state, in providing these new facilities, the school is not seeking to change the fundamental way the school currently operates, or the number of students or staff, but to assist better manage the school's timetable and enhance the learning environment and deliver positive health and wellbeing outcomes for our students and staff. We are certainly available to answer any specific questions. There's probably a couple of things that I can address that were raised by some of the representatives. As far as the layout within the gymnasium of having spectators or seats for 100, they are for the students to be able to sit on and use prior to physical education classes, to put bags and other equipment when activity is happening on the courts. So that is not about having a range of spectators all coming in at various times. The other aspect, as has been alluded to, is that the school has met and spoken to over 12 members of the community about the proposal since September 2019. We have afforded a couple of meetings with both our principal and our presiding member of the board. We've been very open and transparent about the conceptual design elements. We have also listened to feedback about the concerns that have been brought by the 2 or 3 neighbours, and we have made subsequent changes, including the hours of operation from 8 AM to 6 PM. So we are certainly very cognizant of the local community. Regarding the traffic and the parking, we have had a long-standing working relationship with the council on trying to make the area safer for people using this area. In fact, we are trialling some pick up and drop off at the Boa Vista Road. We made changes and made the current drop off and pick up zone in Carr Street a lot larger, and that has been very successful with the feedback from the Hobart City Council confirming that. This proposed development actually enhances that pick-up and drop-off zone. And so we're very mindful of playing our role. In consultation with the Council and Tasmania Police, we firmly believe it is our role to help enable a safer community, but we are not responsible for the compliance and the regulatory authority when it comes to traffic management and parking. And we certainly do care about traffic, we do care about parking, and we do care about our community. We are available and open to any questions that the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mulcahy, did you want to add anything in particular about the design or the proposals and how they might be staged?
Sorry, Deputy Lord Mayor, what do you mean by staged?
Just as far as how the development might occur, like is it one then the other, or what?
Look,
what's
I think
proposed?
it hasn't been decided how that would occur, but I think from the school's point of view, they would probably seek to do the gymnasium first in a construction method, because the gymnasium is replacing the old gymnasium. It's simply a swap for that, how it's currently used. And therefore, for the school to operate, they would have to have a gymnasium on the site. So they'll build the gymnasium first and then fit out the old gymnasium, which is a key part of this project. As Bill said, the proposal doesn't seek to change the way the school is currently being used. It really seeks to give the school a few more teaching spaces in order to manage their timetable. So for any questions, happy with any questions, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we'll start with Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Chair. A suggestion was made that if you would be prepared to have further consultation and defer this, would you consider that?
With due respect, we have had consultation with 2 or 3 neighbours with regard to this proposal. We've taken, various considerations on board, and we've made what we believe are some adjustments to help accommodate that. So I don't foresee right here and now necessarily having to go down that path.
Thank you.
Alderman Briscoe, then Alderman Barakis.
Thank you, Chair. There has been a couple of suggestions. What does the applicant think of? Firstly, limiting the use of Sunday, the facility on a Sunday for 8 days is a condition in the planning approval if it happens tonight. Perhaps that's the first question. I'll have another one in a moment.
We think that it was probably more around the 12 or so occasions that the school may wish to use the activity on a Sunday. It is obviously a little bit hard to foresee whether it can be pinpointed to that number. But yeah, we'd have to consult a little bit closely to determine whether we had to put an exact number on it.
Thank you. So you're not agreeing here that we could have a limit of 8 Sundays in the year?
I don't think 8 would be sufficient for the school.
I thought that was in the report. But anyway, the second, the report indicated that 8 was about the number you'd have a year. But anyway, the second question is, oh, that's right. Yes, the suggestion from the deputations this afternoon were that we have Saturday and Sunday use limited to 4 p.m. How do you feel about that suggestion?
Again, we feel that we've already made an adjustment, changing it from 8 p.m. To 6 p.m. And I suppose really looking at potentially some of the activity that may occur, going to 4:30, 5 o'clock, we feel that that may be too prohibitive.
Okay, so you're not going to concede any more that Sunday afternoon for many people at the time that you do relax, but and if I was living in Car Street, I'd be worried about 100 people there participating, or plus it could be 100 plus, I imagine, in games and cars. Anyway, thank you for the answers.
Alderman Briscoe, I wonder if I can just jump in there and respond to that, add something to it. I think it's very important to recognise that the concerns raised by the representatives are within the context of an expectation that there will be 100 spectators turn up. That's not the case. As Mr Avery has already indicated, the seating is to accommodate 100 people who are students. There will not be members of the public coming from off-site at any time of the week, let alone Saturdays and Sundays. So this 100 spectator business is simply not factual. It's not going to occur.
As you've responded, could I, so you're saying that no parent would want to see their child play a game against another school, for example?
It's not changing the current operation that is currently used with the gymnasium at the moment. So as we've articulated throughout the development application and also in the process, we're not seeking to change what we are currently doing on the campus.
So the new gym is a replica of the old gym, and exactly the same use is happening in both? Same games sort of played in both gyms?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Alderman Barakis.
Thank you, Chair. Just touching on one of the comments, and I suppose I'll give you guys the right to reply, because I think it's a bit of a, I suppose, a concerning assertion, given I think the general, there's many people that would agree that there's some parking issues, I think, broadly around the North Hobart area and the area near the Friends School. About the I can't remember the comment verbatim, but it was about, you know, we're not interested in parking, we're interested in providing an education. Just look, I'd give you guys the right to reply on that. I'm just curious as to what you guys and what the school thinks that it's I suppose its responsibility to start and end when it comes to the matter of parking and the traffic impact around the school.
Look, I mean, that's not a factual comment around the fact that we don't care about parking or we don't care about traffic. We do. We believe it's our role to help support, you know, a safe environment in and around the school. We're also limited as to what we can do as a school organisation around enforcing compliance, around people, you know, parking in the designated areas. We do from time to time have staff that help with students crossing and using the roads safely. So, you know, that we do take this matter seriously. And as I said, we have worked with a number of Hobart City Council officers to help design areas to enable better pick-up and drop-off areas, safer pick-up and drop-off areas. And we're also trialling a bulb crossing on Boa Vista Road at the moment. So we do take it very seriously, and we do intend to continue working with the Hobart City Council and Tas Police, I might add, to help create a safer community.
And Alderman Barakis, sorry, it's Seamus Mulcahy here, the architect. And I'd just, if you'd like to add to your question and to what Bill said. I've been working with the school on this project now for a year, and I can back up Bill and say that the school and this proposal has taken parking very seriously. Currently, just a couple of things. Firstly, the traffic impact assessment was done for this project. There was an assertion that the data was 5 years old. The data was, I think, done in sort of late last year when the DA was being wrapped up. So the data is up to date. Secondly, there's 15 non-compliant cars. So let's just call it ad hoc parking on the site where the gym is to be built. This is ad hoc parking. This is parking that's just developed over time, cars backing on, backing out of the sidewalk as it exists. This proposal formalises those parking spaces. It formalises the 12 of them. That's all you can fit in the space in a formal standard parking arrangement. That means that the parking allows people to drive out of the school forward rather than backing over the footpath. It also means that sight lines are maintained. So the school is creating effectively a safer environment for public and for the children and students. And third thing I just want to note too is the proposal sits back off the road. The school's giving a lot of land over to effectively the streetscape. It's providing all-weather standing area to extend the school's pick-up drop-off zone. It's already been extended once, and that's, as Bill said, it's proven positive, and the school has made a commitment to provide an all-weather sort of space for kids to drop off. The traffic engineer acknowledges it in the report that this pick-up zone will become more efficient than the current. And then really all I'd say is we think it's pretty clear that, despite anecdotal evidence that there is a large amount of cars drop off and pick up, this proposal is not contributing to that. It's in fact very arguable, and the traffic engineer says that it's improving it.
Thank you. And look, you preempted one of my questions about the up-to-dateness of the parking information. That might be one I'll ask the council staff as well. In regards to that, where you've said you've made some area, you've opened up some area. So is that parking, was that just pick up and drop off? Is that on the main road or is that off the road? Just to double check, sorry.
The pick up and drop off area runs almost the whole boundary of the school up Carr Street. And right. So there was some designated timed parking area, and that has been changed in recent times to limit the parking in that morning and also afternoon pick up and drop off times. And so it's enabled a much better flow of traffic and sort of minimised or removed double parking and other issues that have arisen.
That's on the street itself,
yeah.
Correct?
Yeah. Yes.
The proposal also has parking on site, so school staff park on site, and it's formalising those parking spaces.
Right. And is there any reason why that sort of open area that you've said you've kind of, when you mentioned that you've given part of the area back to the, or sorry, to the streetscape, why that couldn't have been made as a sort of off-street turn on pick-up drop-off?
Well, in its current format, no, it's not big enough. It's
right.
It's effectively setting the building back off the street, so it sits behind the level with the adjacent building lines. But instead of the school is landscaping that and extending the footpath back to the building line to create a wider footpath and a covered area for people to wait. Yeah, right. So it's not big enough to turn cars on as such.
Right. And just lastly, I'm just looking at page 48 of the report, and it's got some comments by the officers, I think, where it says it's apparent that the Friends Health and Fitness Gym has placed increasing pressure on the supply of on-street parking in the streets surrounding the site, as it has become used by the general public. If the proposed new gym facility were to be used by the general public in the same way that the Friends Health and Fitness Gym has, this would be expected to further increase the pressure on surrounding residents and businesses. Is the proposed new gym going to be open to the general public or to members and students only?
No, it's not the general public at all. It's it's a separate sort of entity to the Friends Health and Fitness, which is obviously a public gym. This is a private school gym, just as the current gym is.
Right. So just to that point, and it might be something that we have to ask the officers as well. Would that be something you'd be comfortable having solidified as a condition, just that it doesn't be let open to the general public for use?
Alderman Barocas, if I could just jump in there. On page 10 of the papers, there is a section there where it says the gymnasium is approved for use as part of the operation of the school within the overall site. It must not be used for any other use or by any other organisation not associated with the operation of the school as an educational establishment.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, look, I'm comfortable with that then.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Chair. Just one clarification. it was stated that there is no dropping off zone provided, and I'm hearing that the school is going to be providing that, is one. And secondly, so that I'm finished with this, is would you agree that there is currently a significant impact on the residents with regards to parking?
Councillor Dutta, the school pickup and drop-off area is on Carr Street. So this proposal helps extend that. And this is an area that we have been trialling for a while now successfully. So it includes that. And sorry, your other question?
The other question was with regards to parking that has been highlighted, and the ramifications of that to the local residents is quite significant. Would you agree with that?
I think the parking, as far as the school is concerned, hasn't changed with the school's operations for, decade or if not decades. As far as the size of the school, it has not significantly changed over the last 5 to 10 years. The operations and the staff numbers haven't changed. So I understand the concerns around the neighbouring area, but the school is not inherently contributing to any increase traffic activity in the area, therefore parking.
Thank you.
So I just have a couple of questions. You said, Mr. Mulcahy, that the number of formal car parks will be 12 instead of 15, and the staff car parking on Commercial Road, is that available over weekends for people to use when staff are not there?
Yeah, so yes, you can use the car park, the staff car park over the weekend, absolutely.
Okay, and just in relation to, there was a question, whilst it's not related to this, obviously there are a number of concerns that have been raised which we'll need to follow up in city infrastructure services, but there's a live master plan, is there not, for this campus?
Sorry, did you say a light master plan?
A master plan. Is there a master plan for the campus?
Yes,
okay.
That's correct.
Right. Now, one of the representatives who didn't give a deputation today did contact me and may have contacted other elected members. And again, it goes to the heart of parking, this time purely on a Sunday. And the question is whether, whilst you're not looking at both days on the weekend, is it possible, just for some respite for neighbours, particularly in Carr Street, would it be possible as advice to have consideration given to reducing the operating hours on a Sunday to reduce the impacts for adjacent residents associated with the availability of on-street car parking? I mean, will you please consider that?
Yeah, I mean, we can consider that. I suppose it depends on the hours and the number of Sundays that we'd need to consider.
So, is it possible to consider that at 2 o'clock, until 2 o'clock?
I think 2 o'clock would be a little bit early, to be honest. If we've got a day of activity that if we're hosting a few teams for a basketball tournament. I mean, really,
okay, all right. Well, it'd be nice to kind of think that we could negotiate this somehow. Okay, so thank you very much. If there are no further questions, I'll hand it over to the committee and I'll open the item for discussion. Any discussion, or Councillor Coate?
Look, for the purpose of discussion, having read the report and listened to the representatives, and look, often we find ourselves in this tricky situation, don't we? I mean, I think pointing out the elephant in the room to say that parking is an issue before this development application was put forward, and I don't know that it's necessarily helped by this development application, but I mean, upon reading it, it's dropping 3 spots, but then we have heard that it may well assist in the drop-off zoning. And look, ultimately, there is an existing facility used for this purpose. We're looking to build a new one and they'll repurpose the existing one, but it's not actually increasing the net usage of the school. So look, ultimately, we've got to sit here and look at this development application as to, is this allowed to be built? And, you know, and you've always got to wear your hat, which says that if we were to knock it back at a council level and it was appealed, it would then end up costing ratepayers money if it was overturned on appeal. And look, upon hearing the representations and listening to and reading obviously the report and studying it, I personally will be voting in favour of this application. But I think we do need to take a good, strong look at ourselves, because this is one of many examples where, frankly, you know, the amenity of residents who are doing everything right, and even of the school and of the school community itself is being impacted by what is substandard, you know, frankly, parking availability within the city. And look, it is disappointing that obviously this development doesn't have more parks as part of it, but ultimately they're looking to get a new gymnasium to repurpose the old one. So I just don't sit here today and feel that we have enough reasons to knock back this application. But I think there's been very valid points raised, and I'll look to further progress outside of the scope of this development application, what we can do to assist with traffic management in the area.
Thanks, and I presume you did move it, Councillor Coates?
Yes, obviously happy to.
Okay, thank you. All right, Alderman Barakis.
Thank you, Chair. And look, I'll take on board what Councillor Coates said, and I think I'm inclined to broadly agree with him that I think ultimately there's not too many reasons for us to not.
You're breaking up a bit, Alderman Barakis. Alderman Barakis, you're breaking up a bit.
This, try and find a solution to the parking issue, but I think oh, hang on, give me one. Is that better?
It wasn't good, but do you want to just no, you're better, right? Okay. Do you want to just say that, Pracy, that just again, please?
I'll be honest, I've lost you completely, son.
Simon.
All right.
Look, are there
Yeah,
any?
apologies for that. I'm not sure I'm not having much luck with my internet lately. Look, there's been hang on.
Perhaps while Alderman Barakis is sorting out his internet problem, we could go on to next speaker, Chair.
Yeah, sure. And Craig, let us know when you bring Alderman Barakis back to life, please.
So am I next, Chair?
Yep, far away, Alderman Briscoe.
Yeah, look. I think again, I think your suggestion, I think it passed through my head, so that we have to refer the traffic and parking to the infrastructure committee. There are a lot of issues around North Hobart, and lack of parking is one of them. In this area, and it often happens around the school. The drop-off and pick-up points are the place where there's a lot of interaction between the residents and the parents, for example, or maybe senior students. One or two schools that we know of in the last few years have had staff or teachers' aides on duty to help manage the situation of drop-offs and pickups. And I think the school, and I totally believe them, that there is some responsibility there, and it probably needs more permanent staff, old staff on duty more permanently each day, not just as an interim measure. I was wondering whether Alderman Coates could include in the motion that the traffic and parking problems be referred to the infrastructure committee. If we had more time with the application. I probably would agree that perhaps there should be more consultation with the representatives. But if the issue is going to be considered at the Infrastructure Committee, there's an opportunity there for the representatives and the deputations to go to that committee and have a solution. As to the master plan, which you and I, Chair, both brought up, I would have thought that we should have a copy of that master plan. And if there's any deficiencies or suggestions that the council could make to help alleviate parking or traffic issues, then we should have some input. Now, we asked the question, is there a master plan? But we didn't ask the question, is it publicly available to council? So I think it should be publicly available to council. So with those...
Chairman, sorry, Alderman Briscoe, I'll get you to foreshadow that because it's quite separate from this planning matter. So I'll take your foreshadowed motion in a moment. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think when we have big institutions in the middle of residential areas, these issues have to be sorted out to the satisfaction of everyone. And let's hope if we do, my foreshadow motion does get up, that the Infrastructure Committee hopefully has some ideas how to do that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Back to you, Alderman Barakis.
Thank you, and I'm hoping I'm legible now. I'm hoping I'm sounding better. Look, I'm inclined to agree with both Councillor Coates and Alderman Briscoe. I think it would have been nice to have been able to defer this so we can look more broadly at solutions around the parking issue. But if we have a time limit on this, so we kind of have to press on, and I don't really see too many ways. And as Councillor Coates said, if this was to be appealed, I don't think it'd be something that would be very productive as far as finding a solution there. I think it'd be something that'd get knocked back on our decision would get knocked back on appeal, and I think it'd be approved. So look, I'll reluctantly be approving this as it is. I'm just noting the concerns around parking. I think these parking concerns are symptomatic of the broader parking issue in the North Hobart area and that greater area. And I'd like to think that there's more that the council can do to address these infrastructure and parking issues. And look, I'd be supporting what Alderman Briscoe said and what Alderman Briscoe's foreshadowed motion is as well, because I think this is definitely something that we as a council, and I think the Infrastructure Committee should be putting some pretty laser focus on and trying to find some sort of solution more broadly to the issue of parking in that area on that street, and then also the sort of surrounding areas as well, because as this area is getting more and more intensified, and I don't think there's anything wrong with the intensification of the area per se, given that we are growing as a city. I think that we do need to, however, catch up as a council, and we do need to help provide that infrastructure and help our ability the city's ability to flow those cars in and out and let people access that area. Yep. We do have a role to play in that as well. So I'll be supporting the motion by Councillor Coates, and just hoping that we can find some solution with the parking.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or comments? Mr. Noy, could you advise that the advice clause that I had suggested is that a possibility if we did have the acceptance of the applicant?
Yes, through you, Chair. The as an advice clause, yes, that is possible. As a condition of approval, it would be problematic, given that the acceptable solutions or the permitted standards does allow an 8 till 6, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. operation as a permitted operation. So if there was an advice that encouraged the applicant to consider a reduction in operating hours and or use of that gymnasium, then it would be a matter for the applicant to consider and act on it if they were able to do so.
Is there, we're looking at referring this off to infrastructure services in relation to parking, as has been broadly discussed. is there anything in the planning scheme in relation to parking codes which could be tightened or adjusted to have better outcomes for planning, which has been raised by Councillor Coates?
Yeah, look, I think it's a little bit difficult necessarily to think that the planning scheme can necessarily resolve these issues, which are already an issue regardless of any new development. I think these are not, and Alderman Briscoe was right to point out that this is not an uncommon occurrence with these types of institutions, hospitals, schools, that sort of thing, where there is pressure, where they are located adjacent to existing residential suburbs, that it's not uncommon to have these types of conflicts. I think that it is a right move to refer the matter to City Infrastructure Committee, and maybe this is an opportunity to open up a dialogue with the school more generally about how we can better manage that the drop-off and pick-up arrangement. It's not, as I said, it's not an easy one. It's a common occurrence, but if we can collectively get our heads together to try and identify some operational improvements that does provide some relief or better control or better operation of that drop-off and pick-up, then I think that that's probably a much more fruitful endeavour than thinking that changes to the planning scheme around future developments might somehow rectify this issue.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Noy. Look, I understand the concerns of the representors. I know that, and we are trying to get a slightly better outcome with this application, but there's not much give, unfortunately. And Mr. Ronan, no, it's not time to speak now. We're deliberating now, so I won't take your comments. But we do have a week, and we have time to discuss with the applicant and try and get at least some better outcome. So in essence, I think this application is a very good application, despite the problems associated with Carr Street. I think the repurposing of the Oates building is, and using the skin of the gym, the current gym, is a really good repurposing, and obviously the needs by increasing the number of smaller classrooms does have that impact of requiring other indoor facilities for the gymnasium. So I'll be supporting this application as well. So I'll put the motion as it is with no amendments, moved by Councillor Coates. Is there any dissent? Councillor Dutta?
Yes, I vote against.
Okay, so I'll go around the room then. Alderman Briscoe?
For the recommendation.
Alderman Varakis? For? Councillor Dutta?
Against.
Councillor Coates?
For.
And I'll vote for the application. So that will go to, so it's carried 4 votes to 1, and it will go to full council next Monday. Thank you. Oh, sorry, and yeah, we now go to Alderman Briscoe's foreshadowed motion.
Thank you, Chair. So the words might have to be cleaned up a bit, but essentially that the matter of traffic and parking in Carr Street be referred to the Infrastructure Committee, and to involve the residents of Carr Street and the school in working out possible solutions.
Thank you. Alderman Varakis, did you want to say anything?
I did, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to support this. I think it's actually quite important. I think the large part of this has already been debated in the previous motion. There was a question that I in the confusion of my internet not working particularly well that I forgot to ask, and is still relevant towards this, in regards to for the director, in regards to the assertion put earlier by one of the representatives that the traffic information was out of date or a couple of years out of date. And I'd hope that we're using, I'd hope that if we are going to get information provided to the infrastructure committee, that it is up to date. And I just want to confirm whether or not that what was being put was true, or just so we know that we're relying on sort of accurate and up-to-date information.
Mr. Noy.
Yes, through you, Chair. Look, certainly traffic engineers and the like were not concerned with the validity of the data presented by the applicant. There were no concerns raised about that information.
So was that information dated, or I just wanted to confirm whether or not this is true?
Yeah, look, I'd have to take it on notice as to the specifics of the date, but clearly the Mr. Mulcahy indicated that that information was up to date or compiled as of last year. So I'm happy to take that question on notice and provide an out-of-session response.
All right. Okay, thank you. So I think we'll move right along. So is there any dissent to this being referred to City Infrastructure Services Committee? No dissent. Okay, declare that carried. Thank you. So we move now to the supplementary item 12 from the supplementary item agenda, which is Unit 6, 8 to 10 DeWitt Street. So Craig, could you let Colin and Margaret Gray into the room, please? Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Rona. And we have, I don't think Mr. Smee no, I don't think Mr. Smee is on this one, but we're just doing DeWitt Street at the minute. So it's just the applicant for Colin and Margaret Gray. So would you have 5 minutes to address the committee of your concern. So if you'd like to take yourself off mute and far away. Thank you.
Turn it up for me.
Turn it up.
I can't hear.
All right.
Can you hear us? Because we can hear you. Yep. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thanks to the committee for giving us the opportunity to make a submission. Colin and Margaret Gray, we own the unit in question. We did put in a detailed submission in support of the application, which doubtless the members of the committee have read. We just wanted to emphasise a couple of things in relation to that submission, particularly the last couple of dot points. And the first one is that the possibility of using the place as an Airbnb was an important factor we relied on in purchasing the unit a couple of years ago. We haven't, as you may have noticed, we haven't actually used it yet as Airbnb because our son, we allowed our son to use the property whilst he completed university studies. So we haven't actually had the option of taking that up, but we are both retired, and that was something that we would have very much liked to do. Now, in respect of the policy, we understand that planning policy does change from time to time, but we think, I'm sorry, is there something amusing or about what I'm saying?
I'm sorry? Nobody's laughing.
All right.
Sorry, you keep going.
I just had the impression something I'd said was amusing to certain people. As I said, we did rely on this, the possibility of Airbnb in purchasing the unit. We understand that planning policy does change from time to time, but we think an important factor in our type of society is that there ought to be orderly and reasonable transitional arrangements because people rely on settled policy when it comes to property rights. And one of the things that distinguishes our society from certain others is that we don't have abrupt zigzags in policy, or if there are zigzags in policy, there ought to be reasonable allowance made for the detriment that can accrue to people who relied on the former policy. Now, we understand all the things that have been said about the special nature of Battery Point, which indeed is one of the reasons we've purchased property there. But we don't think that Battery Point, the residential amenity of it, is so uniquely special that Battery Point ought to be quarantined totally from the to and fro of the usages that apply to other areas. For example, Sandy Bay and Denern are equally special in our view. So we think that blanket prohibitions, whilst we accept that that's obviously the policy and the way things have gone in recent times, blanket prohibitions as a matter of public policy, to our way of thinking, can result in inequity. And we think that allowing our small unit to be used as an Airbnb, we don't think, with great respect to the interested people who have an opposite view, that that's going to actually destroy the amenity of Battery Point. We think that's an extraordinary assertion. All we're asking for is the extension of an existing privilege. We concede, yes, it is a privilege, but we think there's an important equitable argument here which the committee ought to be take into account as a matter of public policy. Just one factor we noticed from the previous submission when our matter was first considered, that a lot of fuss was made over the traffic issue. We think that as a matter of probability, it's likely that Airbnb people are less likely to have a vehicle than long-term tenants. So that's just a small issue that we wanted to throw into the mix. But our main concern is the one of equity, and it's something we wanted to do in our retirement. And as a result of what, you know, a shift in the political winds, we don't think we ought to be deprived of that possibility. And as we said in our submission, it wasn't too long ago that we very clearly remember that people were being encouraged to make properties available for short stay accommodation.
30 seconds, Chair.
Sorry?
You have 30 seconds to go, Mr. Gray, so if you'd like to just summarise.
Yeah, it wasn't that many months ago that, years ago, that people were saying, look, make more properties available for short stay accommodation. Now it's all shifted, but anyway, we keep coming back to the equity argument. But anyway, thanks to the committee, we hope that our submission's given due consideration, and thanks very much. That's about all we wanted to add.
Thank you. So I'll open it to the committee for questions, unless Mrs. Gray, did you want to add anything in particular?
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Thank you. I think my main concern is that it is so tiny. It is, and its prior use was short-term accommodation, we believe, and that is my main point, that it's almost purpose-built for short-term accommodation. It's a gorgeous it's a tiny, beautiful unit in a gorgeous little spot and with lovely views. And we've enjoyed Airbnbs both in Australia and in Europe, and we can just see that it'd be just purpose-built.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Chair. Now, through you, Chair, when was the initial or the original application made?
It would have been, we haven't run off the whole submission. I can't remember now. We haven't got the file in front of us for that, but it would have been a couple of years ago. It was not long before the policy shifted.
It would have
2018.
been 2018.
Yeah.
Would have probably been June.
Around June. It was just before the policy shifted.
July, 27th of July 2018.
Yeah, we actually, if I can answer this, we signed the contract on the property in November 2017, and there was a very long drawn out process because I believe there were issues with getting council approval for everything. And we didn't actually take possession of the unit until quite late into 2018.
Okay, I think you've answered the question. Councillor Dutta?
Yeah, so I understand then from your answer that you had nearly 2 years.
Yes.
All right,
yes.
Thank you.
Yes, approximately, yes. Yes, that would be correct.
Further questions? If there are no further questions, I thank you. Alderman Briscoe, you just got in time.
Thank you.
No, I didn't have further question. I want to debate it. Thanks.
Okay, all right, thank you. So, all right, so I'll open the item for discussion and start with you, Alderman Briscoe.
Thank you. Look, the situation arises fairly regularly, and it has been the convention of this committee that equity argument rules. 2 years is, in planning terms, is zero almost, and these the applicants, in good faith, had a valid permit, and just through personal circumstances, though, as they've just indicated, it was to a family member, and they didn't actually turn it in. So I think it's valid. It's a valid reason to approve an extension, noting also that the dreadful thing is that if we refuse it tonight, it's not appealable. So just on that argument alone makes me wild, because administrative decisions like this should always be appealable. So I'll move for the extension to be granted.
Thank you. Further discussion, Alderman Barakis.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I'd be supporting the motion by Alderman Briscoe to allow the extension. I think it seems like a pretty simple thing. I think this was approved in the past, and you know, it appears that there also wasn't any submissions to the appeal tribunal in regards to this. I just want to clarify of the director, where it says that, let me just find the thing. It says that this cannot be approved under delegation. Does that mean there's no road to approving this legally, or is this something that we can take and have it allowed to be tested in the in appeals, I guess?
Mr. Noy?
The reference to delegation was officer delegation. So.
Oh right. Oh look, in that case, that does make things a bit easier. I was a bit sort of worried that we might be stuck in a position where we're voting contrary to how I think some in the committee would want this situation to go. In that case, I think that does simplify things. I think, as the applicant said, I think there's a question of property rights here. I think they've got a valid permit, and I think I think there's no reason why this shouldn't be allowed to continue. I think, you know, otherwise we start opening some cans of worms that I don't think we want to be opening when we start wading into those waters. So look, I'm happy to support that. I think that it's a common sense outcome to give this extension of time, and I wish them all the best.
I just have a question in relation to that sort of parity argument. Director, are there other situations that we've considered in this particular area of the covered under the interim planning scheme of Hobart, where this has come to us before?
Look, the history of this policy position, as you may recall, came about by, contrary to council's wishes, the state government opening the scope for visitor accommodation within the residential precincts of Battery Point. This was contrary to a long-standing position within the original Battery Point planning scheme, and one thing that the council subsequently lobbied the state government in relation to. against, because there was a concern and a legitimate one that there was a substantial shift of residential properties from rental and or permanent residence to short-term accommodation. So that was the background. But I suppose coming to the specific question, has there been examples where we have rejected extensions of time in Battery Point for visitor accommodation? Not that I can recall. I think most of them would have been taken up. This is a fairly unique situation where the applicants had not taken up the use because of private circumstances. So it is in some regards a little unique.
Thank you. But essentially, the change to the provisions in relation to visitor accommodation was specific to Battery Point that we as a council requested.
Yeah, that's correct, and certainly there was a significant push by a number of residents within the suburb itself to have this position overturned, and it's pretty unique in terms of state government legislation position that or a statutory position that Battery Point was singled out to have an exclusion for short-term visitor accommodation reintroduced as opposed to any other suburb, a lot of other suburbs such as Sandy Bay and the like.
Okay, thank you. Look, thanks for that information. Look, I have sympathy for the Greys' position. However, some of these battles are hard fought and hard won. And, you know, look, we as a planning authority have a tendency, or have shown a tendency, to erode some of those things that we have fought for quite eagerly. And whilst I completely understand the impacts that this might have on the Greys, I feel that the refusal should be in place. So I'm not going to support the motion as it stands. Thank you. So is there any further comments from any of the elected representatives? If not, we'll go around the room, starting with you, Alderman Briscoe. You're voting in favour of your motion?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Barakis?
Yes.
Councillor Dutta?
Against.
Councillor Coates?
In favour.
And I'll vote against as well. So that is carried and we'll go to council at next Monday's meeting. Thank you.
Just
okay.
To be clear for the applicant, the committee has now voted. The recommendation to full council is for an extension of time.
Thank you, Alderman Briscoe. I think that's quite clear. Thank you. All right, so we'll go on to supplementary item 13. That's 284 Argyle Street, which is a change of use. And we actually, I think I should declare an interest in this item. So, Alderman Barakis, sorry for the late notice, but are you okay to take the chair if the committee?
I'm happy to.
Yep. Okay. All right. I shall. If you can remove me from the.
We good to go? Okay. Now, just because I didn't have. This is a bit impromptu. Just double checking. It appears that we've got some representors. So who can I just ask who is who's first up? And I'll get my.
Yes, Chair. Mr. Littlejohn's first up.
Right, Mr. Littlejohn, you've got 5 minutes.
Okay. I'm not sure. It would appear my camera's not working. So
it's not, but we can hear you loud and clear. So
Okay, so I'll go from there. Excuse me. Thanks for the opportunity of speaking to the committee. I just want to indicate that we live at 323 Argyle Street, which is opposite the proposed development, within 20 metres. Our property is zoned residential 3. Our house is a Georgian sandstone, circa 1850, heritage listed, which we've meticulously maintained for the past 28 years. We purchased this property in 1992, and the Hobart City Council advised that at that time was that the precinct should be rehabilitated as an inner city residential area. There should be minimal intrusion or further development of non-residential uses, not necessarily to serve local residents. Any modifications or expansion of any existing non-residential use will not be approved unless it can be demonstrated that it will neither displace nor adversely affect any residential uses and will be compatible in scale and character with a residential environment. That was the basis of which we have been quite happy in the last 28 years living here. It's been an ideal inner city property for us and moving into retirement. Our objections are specifically in relation to the following: the hours of operation, noise, parking, and the black fungus caused by distilleries. Now, I took the liberty of emailing each of you last night with some information on the black fungus. I don't know whether you've had time to look at that, but it particularly is of concern. What we've found is that whisky fungus grows by feeding on the vapours of the alcohol that is being distilled. Whisky fungus can be identified by its telltale black crusty velvet appearance, and it does not just frequent distillery walls and rooftops. Whisky fungus can appear and grow as far as the wind carries the whisky vapours. Common spots this fungus grows on includes rooftops, walls of houses, tree bark, and even nearby road signs. Over time, if it's left to grow unmanaged, the fungus can wear down roof tiles and building exteriors. It needs to be removed every few months. This was raised in representation to the council, but the council's response was that this problem is unlikely with the small-scale distillery to occur, and abatement would be via the Environmental Management and Pollution Control Act 1994, which we definitely feel we need further clarification with. By interest, we happened to be on the Tasman Peninsula this last weekend, and we visited McHenry's whisky distillery at a place called Radnor on the Tasman Peninsula. And we did notice there, and we were talking to the owner, very significant examples of this black fungus on the buildings around the distillery. We note that distilleries generally are in country areas, Bothwell Oatlands, Derwent Valley, Coal River Valley, and we feel that this question really needs to be investigated further. Our real concern is that we've got a sandstone house. We don't want black soot all over it, and if this is a potential, we would be seeking to have further investigation as to what's the likely impact from it. Should there be this problem, it's indicated that it would be the responsibility of the homeowner to abate it and do the cleaning work, which would be a totally unsatisfactory situation. We fear the potential loss of value in our property because of this. We note that there are, it is a residential area. We're within 20 metres of the development. The development is bounded by three other properties in residential areas.
30 seconds, Chair.
Sorry?
You've got 30 seconds, so if you could just wrap it up.
So to wrap it up, we want further investigation. We would have liked the opportunity of talking about noise particularly, and also in relation to parking. But anyway, the main issue is this black fungus. I'm hoping that as a committee that you've had the opportunity of looking at the email that I sent you with actual photos. It is happening in Tasmania. The size of the distillery, I would assume, would be equivalent to what we're talking about across the road. They employ about 7 people, and unfortunately, they've had to put off for JobKeeper. They've put off 4 of them. They're just working on the skeleton at the moment. Could we please organise? Could we please suggest that this is investigated further?
Right. Thank you, Mr. Littlejohn. Are there any questions of the committee? Doesn't appear to be. I've got one. Oh, Alderman Briscoe.
Thank you, Acting Chair. Mr. Littlejohn. So you believe your understanding of the fungus, the black fungus from ethanol, is from airborne ethanol that settles on neighbouring properties or on buildings?
Yeah, that's what we're led to believe. That's also in storage, the bond storage through the maturation period. The ethanol is I understand, is emitted at that time too, so it can be occurring over an extended period of time. But I can assure you, it's very unsightly when you look at it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Littlejohn. I'll also ask some questions of the officers as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Briscoe. And I just do have one on the issue of the mould as well. Just noting that it's not a. So are you aware that it's not actually a planning, or it doesn't appear to be a planning consideration? I'll get some further clarification from the director later on, but it doesn't appear to be a clarification. So I imagine it would be more a case of, if there are any issues that are caused by this, it'd be a matter between, or there'd be some sort of liability on the part of the applicant. But are you aware that it's not a planning consideration?
Who you're directing to? No, I'm not aware that it's not a planning consideration.
Right. Okay. Look, if there's no other questions, I'll thank you for your time, and I think we'll move on to the next representative, which is Nolene Foster. Nolene, you got 5 minutes.
Sorry. Good evening. Thank you for your time. My husband and I live at 321 Argyle Street, directly opposite the proposed development. It's less than 20 metres from our front door. This is the view of that development from the front of our home. It's virtually a hop, skip and a jump across the road. We have serious concern about a number of issues, including noise. The noise assessment report concludes that noise levels would be unlikely to represent an impact to residential amenity. Operations cease at 10:30 and will not cause sleep disturbance. Well, I have to differ on that. Our bedroom is located in the front of our home, directly opposite the proposed development, so there will definitely be sleep disturbance for us. The 10:30 p.m. closure assumes all patrons will leave by that time, but in reality, this will not be the case. Patrons will engage with friends, talking and drinking, so moving them on exactly at 10:30 is neither possible nor realistic. And once they have moved on, they'll congregate outside on the footpath to say their farewells and finish conversations. So effectively, it will be closer to 11 p.m. before there is a quiet area. And at night, noise is exacerbated. So sleep disturbance will definitely be a factor for us, and it will be a factor 7 days a week. An early night will become a thing of the past for my husband and I. There's also the factor of the amplified music, which the report says there will be some impacts upon properties in the adjacent inner residential zone with audible music being heard. The report further says that night noise generated by patrons in the outside overflow seating area and from patrons inside the building with doors open will exceed acceptable levels. On page 38 under advice, it states, it is recommended that the doors to the front of the house component of the proposed development remain closed as much as practicable to mitigate noise impacts on residential amenity. Well, what does that actually mean, as much as practicable to mitigate noise impacts? What checks would be in place to monitor this, if any? More than likely, the doors will be open most days, particularly during the summer months, effectively creating noise and a significant loss to our privacy, which will impact on us as our home is located directly opposite the development. Our amenity will again be impacted. We will have to live with this 7 days a week. External lighting is also of a concern. External lighting within 50 metres of a residential zone must be turned off between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. This proposal does not comply with that, as the external lighting will be on at least until 10:30 p.m. and possibly longer. The report goes on to say external lighting within 50 metres of a residential zone must not adversely affect the amenity of adjoining properties, i.e. distance to habitable rooms in an adjacent dwelling. Well, our bedroom is at the front of the house, so it will have an impact. Fungal impacts. The black fungus has the potential to become a huge problem from us and other residents. The report says that such impacts are typical to large-scale distillery operations and would be unlikely to arise with the proposed distillery. Exactly how unlikely is it? Our home is within 20 metres of this distillery. What are the planning officers basing unlikely to arise on? Were there tests, surveys, reports? We would really be interested to see the documentation they used to come up with that conclusion, unlikely to arise. How can you be so sure that the black fungus will not be a problem for us? We strongly believe a thorough investigation is warranted on this before any decision is made by council. And I also know what Philip Littlejohn said about the owner being responsible for the maintenance cost. To put these costs, if they are going to happen, onto the property owners, it's unreasonable, unjust, and certainly unfair because we didn't create the problem. Parking. Well, that's going to be an issue. Parking will be a premium for visitors and residents, and particularly for those who do not have off-street parking. I mean, the interim park planning scheme of 2015 said that the DA for this application did not provide an acceptable level of off-street car parks. And the report essentially said it's an amenity issue for us residents. So it's no longer an interim planning scheme issue, it's an amenity. Smoking, where do patrons smoke? No provision seems to have been made for this. Amenity is a word that has been used throughout this report, but little has been put forward to assist us with preserving our amenity. Ways have been found to either dismiss or diminish our amenity as having little or no relevance to the proposed development application. We're talking about our home, our current lifestyle, the way we live. Our home is our sanctuary. It's a place to escape from the world. This proposed development will impact severely on us and how we live in our home. All these factors will change the landscape of our current amenity. The HCC planning officers assessed our concerns by saying that whilst there will be some impacts as a result of this proposed change of use, these will not be to an extent that would represent an unreasonable impact upon the amenity of adjoining sensitive use. However, if you look at the list of changes that will occur as a result of this development, it's not very hard to see that these changes will definitely have a detrimental effect on us and how we live our lives. We live directly opposite the development. It will be in our face every day and every time we go outside. The proposed development application for a distillery has not met a number of criteria, but ways have been found around this criteria or these criteria, and is now recommended for approval by the planning officers. In conclusion, our concerns are 7-day-a-week trading, hours of operation, the increased noise factor, the loss of privacy, increased parking demand, external lighting, and more importantly, the prospect of black fungus and possibly ongoing maintenance issues. If this development is given approval, our home, our haven will be very much changed and not for the better, I'm afraid. To believe otherwise is being unrealistic. We urge you all to give thorough consideration to this development and the resulting changes it will make to this area. If this proposal goes ahead, the lifestyle we currently enjoy will be greatly diminished. It will change how we live our lives significantly. And more particularly, if the black fungus takes hold, the ramifications will be significant and ongoing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Foster. Are there any questions? Alderman Briscoe, you've got your hand up. Oh, no. Look, if there's no questions, thank you for your time and thank you for your contribution. And we now move on to the applicants, Mr. Smee, Mr. Kingston, and Mr. Coleman. Are you guys presenting together or?
It will just be myself, Rob Kingston, presenting initially.
And then the others will take questions, I assume. Thank you. You've got 5 minutes.
Right. Dear councillors and aldermen, thank you for your time. In this presentation, I wish to highlight that we are creating a tasting room as opposed to a bar. I'll then describe how a tasting room is different to a bar and most importantly, illustrate based on our brand values why we will contribute positively to the City of Hobart and to the local community. Finally, I will briefly respond to some points made in the representations received. We're establishing a tasting room. We're not a bar, a nightclub, a live music venue, a function centre or event space. We are specifically a tasting room. We have no interest in being any of those other types of venues, which is why we're proposing to close at 10:30 p.m, operating hours that are more consistent with that of a restaurant than a bar. A tasting room is a venue which showcases the products we have crafted and importantly showcases and brings to life our brand values and identity. This is why our tasting room is built around the trend of consumers drinking less, but drinking better quality beverages. This is a global trend regarding how consumers today, especially those who are visiting craft producers, are consuming alcohol. In order for us to showcase our product and brand in the best possible way, we need to be a responsible venue that promotes responsible consumption of alcohol, which leads to customers who respect the venue, the brand, and importantly, the community in which we reside. In addition, the tasting room will have a strong tourism focus where the emphasis will be on educating consumers around the production process, the craftsmanship that goes into the products, and the ethos which underpins it. In particular, we aim to tell the story of how Tasmania's pristine environment, multi-generational farmers, and local businesses are working together to create truly unique and world-class products. I will now briefly address some of the specific concerns raised in the representations. I would like to note that these responses are based on our considerable industry experience. In particular, time we've spent working in similar tasting room type venues. In regards to our closing time, food service will finish at 9 p.m, last drinks will be at 10 p.m. This means all customers and staff, with the exception of 2 tasting room staff, will be off-site at the stated closing time of 10:30 p.m. The remaining 2 staff will quietly complete end-of-day activities before vacating at around 11 p.m. In regards to noise and traffic, it is worth noting that we have engaged suitably qualified professionals who have looked at worst-case scenarios, and they've independently determined that our proposal is within acceptable performance criteria. In regards to parking, we envisage the majority of customers will most likely use Uber and taxis coming to and from the venue, and thus will not negatively impact the availability of parking in the area. In our experience, most customers, when attending a venue and planning to consume alcohol, opt for other means of transport because they don't want to drink drive. In regards to the black fungus, we believe our production capacity, in particular the capacity stored on site, and low humidity both mean this will not be an issue in the area. In regards to deliveries, our ample hard stand area will mean that we do not have deliveries taking place on the footpath or taking up local parking spaces. Deliveries will be scheduled at times that have the least impact on residents and traffic. Specifically in regards to traffic management, whilst we have heard objections to the findings in this report, I could equally argue that the parking demand in the area during May, when the assessment was undertaken, was in fact greater because there were more people working from home and thus parking at home. The Batch House apartments were under construction with trades coming and going, and there were more people driving to Soundy Park during the day for exercise. I only raise this point to highlight the fact that There are two differing opinions, which is precisely why we engage suitably qualified professionals to provide this advice. I trust that with this perspective of the founder's business philosophy, the brand's strong community values and understanding of the objective of the tasting room, you can clearly see that we strive to be a positive contributor to the fabric of North Hobart, and that we have no desire to be loud or disruptive, as it runs completely contrary to the brand and business that we are trying to build. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Kingston. Are there any questions from the committee? Alderman Briscoe.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Kingston, you say you have considerable experience, or your firm has. Can you just name where that experience was happening? And I've got another question after that one.
Yeah, sure. So myself personally, I was a finance manager at Mobrew for a couple of years, and then I was the CEO of Lark Distillery for a number of years. Nathan Reeves, he was the head blender at Lark Distillery, and both Nathan and Dave have considerable experience working at wineries in Victoria, such as Giant Steps and Oakridge. So, yep.
Thank you for that. Now, the second question is, managing, obviously, ethanol in atmosphere would be pollution. What sort of steps would you take to reduce any ethanol and other, presumably other organic products that come from your distillery? How do you manage that?
The majority of it is really, it's all like a closed production loop. So that sort of stops any of these things escaping, I suppose. And then the other key thing is that the vast majority of our bond storage will in fact be off-site in purpose-built facilities. So the actual storage of alcohol on site is really more of a transient or tourism type nature.
Rob, do you mind if I just answer a little bit of that for?
Yeah, sure.
As well. Obviously, the design of the system has a very stringent design code because of the management of ethanol, and so the consulting team of Cova Consultants and JMG have all been involved in most of the distilleries around Tasmania, especially with regards to Lark and making that all compliant. So, as Rob mentioned, most of the systems are fully closed, but there is a very rigid environmental monitoring impact so that ethanol release can't happen. It's done by controls and a lot of anything that happens. And also the same with the black fungus that was mentioned, the temperature conditions that have to be achieved to make that happen are fully negated in a controlled environment, which is being fully engineered and passed by all of the environmental supervisors.
So as a supplementary, either Mr. Kingston or Mr. Coleman, so if, for example, you had an outbreak of black mold or black fungus due to the ethanol, would that indicate that you would close down and do a good scrub, I presume?
Well, if that ever happened, you would, but it can't happen because it's the temperature monitoring and the control systems that are in place are designed to prevent that all happening. Hence, why all the distillery structures now and various tasting rooms have moved closer to the CBD around, it's not only in Australia, it's around the world, so that the distillery components can be utilised by everybody and they can actually see it in a working environment rather than effectively buying a bottle of spirits or tasting some spirits. So when you look at, say, the old Lark tasting room that was down by the Constitution Dock area, which has now been in the process of being moved, all of them are looking at bringing a small distillery component with it so people can experience how everything is produced and understand it. So it's more about, as Rob mentioned, bringing a visual presentation of how the whiskey especially is done, and also how brewing is done. And like all of the consultants involved in the project have relied on their previous experience, but it's not experience that's been learned overnight. The teams have worked on things like Little Creatures, which is right across Australia in Western Australia, Fremantle, again in Geelong, and all of the smaller breweries that are popping up in and around Melbourne. So it's a fairly defined business. It's not an old sort of fly-by-nighters. It's a really strictly controlled environment now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alderman Briscoe. Councillor Dutta, sorry.
Thank you, Acting Chair. I've got a question on parking. The question is, how many spaces are you required to provide and how many have you provided? And do you think this will have a significant impact on the local residents?
You want to take that one, Rob?
I'm happy to take that one, Dean, if you like.
Yeah, I think that's best, Adam. Thanks.
I've just got our planning report in front of us, Councillor Dutta, and that states that 32 spaces were required in accordance with table E61 from the planning scheme. However, our traffic impact assessment calculated that the actual car parking demand, based upon more realistic figures such as actual occupancy rather than just a floor area calculation, which is what the planning scheme is based upon, that calculated car parking demand at 18 spaces. In terms of impact upon the neighbourhood, or the traffic impact assessment concludes that impact will be acceptable, largely because the availability of on-street spaces is improved. There's greater availability of on-street spaces at the times when our proposed business will be busier. So obviously the greater car parking demand for the proposed operation is generated by the tasting room component. That's when people will be on the site. It's not necessarily generated by the distillery component. The distillery component will generally be operating weekdays. The tasting room component will generally operate weeknights and weekends. And so the TIA found that the availability of on-street car parking spaces on weeknights and weekends was greater. Therefore, there will be reduced impact as a result of our proposal.
Thank you.
Thank you. If nobody else has any other questions, I've got a couple. And I suppose just following on from Alderman Briscoe's line of questioning regarding the mould, and once again acknowledging that as far as I'm aware, it's not a planning consideration. Not pretending to be an expert in any way, shape, or form in regards to this, I imagine that you guys would have some responsibilities under environmental protection regulations and such that you guys would be all over. Can you just elaborate on that sort of stuff, or am I correct there?
No, you're spot on there. There's a defined code, and of late, our firm, with regard to a lot of the consultants, have been working hand in hand with probably the 4 major consultants across to Tasmania, of getting all the systems compliant. Even Lark in its early stages, because of the expansion that was done, wasn't fully compliant. They now all are, and not only the various codes got to be met, but places like TasWater, for example, have vastly improved guidelines that we have to meet as well with regards to discharging and waste treatment and all that sort of side of it. So it's certainly been improved out of sight and fully safe and compliant now, as it has to be.
And just to follow up on that, I assume that you guys would need to have shown that you've satisfied those requirements before you get approval under that act, would you? And
yes, yeah. And that's all part of the DA application. All of those documents are done and provided.
Yep. And like, just hypothetically, should there be a situation where there's, I don't know what you'd call it, a non-compliance, or you'd call it a incident where this is, the black mold's gotten out, even though I accept what you're saying, that it's a closed system, that's very unlikely to happen. Does those environmental regulations stipulate any liability there? Because I imagine this is a process or a system that exists outside of the council, and I think it'd almost be a sort of federal law thing.
Yeah, it is. It's an Australian standard and a code, and it's been improved year by year. And the regulations have got and as they should have, they've become far more difficult, and that's where the design component has been significantly upgraded. Like when you look at a still, they're beautiful pieces of equipment, great looking copper and things like that, but the controls to the side of it designed such that temperatures can't exceed a certain level, that any vapor that's released can't happen because it's a closed system. But to that end, there's a number of monitors that are put in place so that should there be any form of vapor, the system shuts down and gets reset and maintained. So yeah, it's the likelihood of it happening. Nothing's 100%, but it's.
But there are processes in place should there unlock. Yeah.
Yes.
Look, thank you for that. It doesn't appear that there's any further questions. So that being the case, thank you all for your time, and we'll move on to deliberating the motion. If anyone has anything to, Alderman Briscoe.
Look, I understand the concerns of the representatives and the people who made deputations today, and there are fears that an increased noise and more parking issues, and this part of the street, I just reread the report. It's got 6,000 cars go past it. So whilst I understand that would go reduced during the evening time when this business would be operating, like a similar item earlier this evening, I don't think we've got sufficient reasons to refuse this, and we trend to believe that if the amenity issues are great, we will try and defer it for further consultation. But it's a legitimate business. There's a lot of controls around it because it's alcohol related. A lot of controls around a food business as well. The operators have indicated that they're experienced operators, and certainly I recognise at least one of the applicants tonight who's got a lot of experience in this industry, distilling at least. So I'm happy and realising there are valid concerns, but not to the sufficient that would bring in a refusal is in order. So and we've had the planning officer, professional planning officers recommend approval. So I will move the motion for approval as per officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Alderman Briscoe. So we have a motion for approval, and I did just have a couple of questions for the director, just for clarification. So just in the talks of the zoning and the residential zone, just to clarify, this is light industrial, and any reference to residential is just its proximity to residential, but it's not itself in a residential zone. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. And on the topic of the black mold, I'm fairly certain that I'm correct, but I never want to make any of these sort of assumptions. That in itself isn't a planning consideration for today. It's more something, I suppose, for environmental guidelines and regulations external to council. Would that be correct?
Well, it is subject to environmental guidelines and controls, but it may well be an issue that council would have to address under the Environmental Management and Pollution Control Act if there was an outbreak attributed to the operation of this business. But as indicated, we believe on the evidence that we have that that's unlikely at a scale and specific operational basis that's presented to us today. Look, I understand it's a concern of residents, but given the evidence that we have to date, we don't believe that it'll be an issue. But there are safeguards in place should it become so.
And just to confirm, I should have asked this from the applicants, but this is more of a showcase distillery. It's not an industrial scale thing from what I gathered. So we wouldn't be talking about huge quantities of ethanol and stuff pumping through this place, even with it being considered that it's a closed system and it's up to its.
Yeah, look, it's a relatively boutique operation. We have experience of boutique operations elsewhere within residential suburbs within Hobart that haven't generated those sorts of concerns. Taking that this does have a sort of a tasting facility attached to it, which is slightly different to our experience with another distillery not too far from this location. But yeah, we certainly have that experience ourselves.
And the other distilleries that we do have within the Hobart area have been able to manage this issue.
Yeah, we believe so.
Okay. Look, that's all I've got. I think this is I think the concerns of the representatives, whilst valid, I think as Alderman Briscoe said, I don't think that there's anything that would justify rejecting this. And I think should this go to appeals, if this was to be rejected, I think it'd get overturned pretty quickly. Look, I think it just needs to be sort of said that this is something that is in a it's in a light industrial zone, not a residential zone, but it's also in a part of the North Hobart, I think, that's rapidly growing, rapidly intensifying. And I think, this is something that can be it's an exciting new business. And I think it's part of that promoting of the boutique products and stuff that we should be encouraging. That itself isn't a planning consideration, but I think all said and done and all together, I think this is quite an exciting project, and I'm happy to support it. And so I'll leave it there, and unless anybody else has anything to add, doesn't appear. So I'll put the motion, starting with Alderman Briscoe. How do you vote?
I vote for the motion. I move. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Coates.
Oh, sorry. I just think I'll say in favour.
Favour. Councillor Dutta.
Against.
Against. And I'll vote for. So I think that is 3-1, and that is approved. And I believe that will go to full council, I assume. I don't have the.
Yes, Chair, that will go to council.
Okay, thank you very much. And I suppose we better let in the good Councillor Burnett back into the meeting. And I'll vacate the chair.
Right. Thank you, Alderman Barakis. So we move now to 7.1.2, 132 to 140 Elizabeth Street, Hobart, extension to operating hours. Alderman Briscoe.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to move this recommendation that the officers have put for approval.
Thank you. Discussion? I have a question in relation to the operating hours. So the licensing commission has already approved the hours, have they?
That's right. Yes, they have, but they're not prepared to extend them, noting that they don't have planning consent. So we've had a number of these applications in recent times where they have done an audit, I suppose, of their licenses and requiring these establishments to prove their planning approvals, and yeah, this is one of a number that we've recently had to deal with.
Okay, so we're looking at extension of operating hours between 12 to 3 a.m. Monday to Thursday and 12 to 4 a.m. Friday and Saturday. Okay, further discussion? If not, Councillor Coates?
Look, just to highlight for those who perhaps haven't been past it. I mean, I went. I've been there before, just to in anticipation of this, just to scope it out. But I mean, I think it's a valid point. But across the road is the university accommodation. So all those people are actually quite set back from the actual street level, and if you like, quite at height. So I don't think this would actually have much of an impact on local residents, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, I think the other representatives might have a different feeling about that. But anyway, okay. So this decision is made at committee, is it? Yep, it's a committee decision. Okay, all right. So I'll put the motion moved by Alderman Briscoe, was it?
Yes.
Yep, thank you. All right, so is there any dissent? Okay, so no dissent. Declare that carried unanimously. We now go back to the supplementary, Dave. Yep, okay.
8.1, Chair.
Yep, so, 8.1, we've done the supplementaries. Yep, we have two. Okay, so 8.1 is reports, 1 Hall Street Ridgeway, consent to construct building outside the building envelope. Do you want to say anything about this, Mr. Noy?
Yeah, look, it's a reasonably straightforward proposal. They've received planning consent to build a garage shed fairly close to the existing dwelling. It is outside a building envelope notated on the title, and any approval for this to occur requires a separate council consent. And it's recommended by the officers to support it. There's no necessary any additional land clearing required by the proposal, and is fully supported by the officers.
Okay, can I have somebody move that, please? Councillor Dutta, is there anything you wanted to add?
No, I would move that.
Thank you. Further discussion? No further discussion. Is there any dissent to the motion? No dissent. It's carried unanimously. Item 8.2 is monthly building stats. Can I have that? Somebody receive and note that? Alderman Briscoe?
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Alderman Briscoe.
Just note that the August figures are quite considerably down from last year. 13 million or nearly 14 million last year and 6 million, and it's probably expected. Even though last year had a couple of major projects, that doesn't explain everything. In the 12 months, we're down nearly 101 million. Again, it demonstrates that there is a slowdown. Maybe Mr. Noy might disagree with me, but those figures don't lie. Thank you.
Mr. Noy?
Yeah, look, I would agree with Alderman Briscoe. I think there's certainly been a drop-off in the commercial sector. We're probably seeing the residential sector holding up reasonably well, but given the clearly the global uncertainty out there with the economies, that it's the commercial sector that's I suppose a little bit nervous and being cautious as a result. But we have had a number of large planning applications lodged now. Whether they proceed to building is another thing. Thank you.
Alderman Barakis.
Thank you, Chair. And just jumping off what the director just said, obviously we can see the pretty significant drop in sort of between February and June, and I think that's pretty self-explanatory as to what's caused that. But I think it is interesting to note that there's been a drop down from the previous year all the way back to I think every month other than August last year, and then the previous years, it looks like it's generally a drop off from the previous year again. So I think we can't set all of that we can't blame all of that on the pandemic. And as the director said, we've got a few larger projects that are on the horizon, but it'll be interesting to see if they get approved or if they do proceed to being built. So that'll be something to keep an eagle eye on.
Any further discussion Okay, I'll put the motion moved by Alderman Briscoe. Is there any dissent? No dissent. Declare that carried. Item 8.3, delegated decisions report, planning. You want to move that as well, Alderman Briscoe?
Why not? Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. It's for receiving and noting. No dissent. If no dissent, I'll declare that carried. Item 8.4, city planning advertising report. Alderman Barakis, do you want to move that?
Sure.
And you want to make? You don't want to make any comments? No. Okay.
I don't. I'm happy to.
Oh, Ms. Abbey, would you like to make some comments?
There are a number of items which are marked as coming to council and committee, but there aren't any particularly significant proposals as part of the list.
So is the Macquarie Street Jaws Architects, the Naval Military Club, or whatever it is, Naval Club, is that still on here, or is that
the Davey Street?
Sorry, Davey Street. Yeah.
That has finished advertising, and I understand it's on the next round.
Right. Thank you. Okay. All right. So Alderman Barakis has moved that. Is there any dissent from that? No dissent. Declare that carried. Item 9 is responses to questions without notice. 9.1 building approvals and 9.2 planning scheme amendments. PSA 19.1. Alderman Barakis, you happy to receive and note that?
Happy to note the answers to my questions. Yes.
Thank you. Any dissent? No dissent. Declare that carried. Item 10, questions without notice. Are there any questions without notice? I have some questions without notice, quite a number actually. And I have these written. So start with number 1. And these are all to you, Director. There are times when it appears that submitted documentation for development applications does not always reflect what is actually intended. What certainty can representors and the general public have that the advertised planning application documents are an accurate representation of the proposed development?
Happy to take that one on notice.
Okay.
Chair.
And second part of that is, if the information is found to be wanting, is there a mechanism to improve the quality of plans and information submitted upon which representatives, planners and elected members can properly interpret the plans?
I'm happy to take that one on notice, Chair.
Okay, and I've got a couple of examples which I'll send to you. My second topic relates to minor amendments. How many applications under Section 56 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act for minor amendments have occurred in decisions made by the council in the past 12 months?
Again, Chair, I'll take that one on notice.
Okay. And can the Director provide information on how many approved applications of multi-storey apartments and commercial properties have not started the building within the 2-year statutory timeframe of those that have been approved?
Have you got a time horizon for that?
Well, we can say the past 3 years. Well, you know, like that's the thing. It's 2 years since they may not have started, so probably 5 years.
I'd need to obviously obtain that information from our database, so I'll take that one on notice.
Okay. The decision for approval last Monday for 5 to 7 Sandy Bay Road was made in part according to a discretion relating to height. The applicant's information was referenced in the report to committee item 7.1.1 of the planning meeting, 31/8/20 the 31st of August, which referred to the height of a building of 19 metres at 9 Sandy Bay Road. As yet, while the most recent application for 9 Sandy Bay Road was approved, it has not been built. Could the Director advise as to how many times in the past 3 years the height of an unconstructed building has been considered relevant in a planning recommendation?
I'm happy to take that one on notice, Chair.
Okay. And my final question, some applications require General Manager's consent. Could the Director outline under which circumstances the General Manager's consent is required, and at what stage of the development application process does this occur? Is Hobart's approach to providing General Manager's consent, including when it is provided, consistent with that of other planning authorities in Tasmania? And have there been recent situations when the General Manager's consent has not been granted?
Through you, Chair, I'm happy to take that one on notice as well.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's quite a stack there that'll keep you more than busy, I'm sure. Okay, item 11 is closed portion of the meeting. Can I have somebody move that, please? Thank you, Alderman Briscoe. Any dissent that we move into close? No dissent. Declare the open portion of this meeting closed, and thank those who have listened, members of the public who have listened.